Let me start with a quote from Marshall McLuhan. The medium is the message. This is a quote that we founded Electronic Arts on. Our founder, Trip Hawkins, he was very fond of McLuhan's research and his work. And the way I most remember the kind of concept, Trip would often talk about the fact that video games were a yet-to-arrive medium. And some would say they have, some would say they haven't. That's part of the ongoing struggle. But if you look at the history of media, and we went from no media, so you might say that Gutenberg was the first moment of media. We had the press, we had printed, replicable media. Then we went to the next dimension. We had audio, so we had the radio, which was much more recently invented, but it was huge growth in terms of the access to people. And then we added television, and you know what kind of dramatic change that caused in society, adding audio and visual together. That was very exciting and accessed even more and more people. Now we have the next step, which is interactivity. So you now have all three components together. And I believe that is what has driven the massive growth that we've had in the business, and still more to come. Very interestingly, that power from the video game has grown the industry to become bigger than the film business. Now, we in the video game industry, I think we're still a little insecure about how important and influential we are, so we always want to compare ourselves to other media industries. The Telegraph at the end of last year quotes figures for 2009 that says here in the UK that more money was spent on video games than even on films, even though it was one of the best years in British film history. £500 million more. But Call of Duty was the industry's biggest release in history. And in under 12 months, $1 billion was spent by consumers on that single franchise. So that gives you a sense of just how big the industry is. That's similar to something like a Titanic. You'd look at Avatar, is in that sort of range. So it's, these are significant franchises. In fact, the industry is going to grow from £35 billion in the next 5 years to over £50 billion. But we still have, this insecurity. A big game coming out isn't usually the talk of society like a film might be, or some of the other kind of classic mediums. However, we're starting to see a massive shift in where people are playing games and how big the game playing universe is. We did this kind of statistic here of 80% of people have played or played games. What's happening now is people are playing games on the internet, and in particular, they're playing them on social networks, things like Facebook. Right now, there are 400 million people that have a Facebook account. 200 million of those, 50%, are playing games. What's happening on Facebook are very simple, fun-to-play games that you play with your friends. The UK has 26% of the top 100 game studios. There are 100 great game studios in the world, 26 of them are in the UK. And more than that, 3 of them are within that 500, sort of one mile radius from here. And I found that very interesting. And I wondered, why is that? What was the driver that would cause the UK to have such above average index in this kind of market share? And it seems to me, if you go back and you look at intellectual property in general, where, what are some of the key franchises in the gaming industry? Well, there are things like James Bond. That was written in the United Kingdom. Lord of the Rings, another classic British IP. And then, of course, most recently, the enormously globally successful Harry Potter. So there's such a strong literary tradition that is global, translated in all these languages, and it provides a very rich set of intellectual property to then base computer games on, which is very important. Another key aspect is the UK has been in computers and computer gaming since the very beginning. Many of you will recognize the Sinclair Spectrum, an absolute breakthrough in price value. But what it means is that in the UK, people started programming very early, and that allowed them to gain experience. Being an early adopter, I think, is key. And I think another important thing is that there's a lot of money spent on video games in the UK. In fact, if you take the global the industry data and you say, okay, America, North America, there are 310 million people between Canada and North America. How much is spent on video games? It's about $3 a person. And if you do the same math here in the UK, pro rata, it's about $3.50. So even in a media-intense place like the US, the UK over-indexes on that. So the consumers are here, avidly consuming the game. So people know what they want. So I think that those elements put together are one of the reasons there's such a creative culture here, and it actually translates into commercial success. A lot of things are being sent to places like this, more like the industrialization of computer game making. You've got high-density places in India, in China, most of the world, because a digital medium is so easy to transfer, particularly art. You'll have thousands of artists that are working on a few projects. I've been to some of these places, and they're incredible. They have 8-hour shifts, 3 shifts a day, 24 hours the computers are being used. And it's a completely different world. And I think that's going to put a lot of pressure on game development, clearly in the West and globally. And of course in the UK, every industry is hyper-competitive, and this is no exception. I think the UK has to change in order to adapt to the new situation. There is a fantastic base of talent, but I think that we're going to see clearly a continued shift of parts of the game being the large-scale parts being done in other countries, in lower cost-based countries. But I think if we are smart, we will continue to have our top talent here, and that really are the game designers, the marketing leads, the people that are actually defining the high-value aspects of the game, and then things are getting packaged and sent to other countries to do the artwork, etc. That's one solution. Another, I think, is the continued investment in education. The UK has done a fantastic job so far in putting computer game talent through the university system. There are actually dedicated courses now. I don't know what's happening at this university, but I know EA have hired lots of people from Holloway and other neighboring universities because they have a big facility in Guildford. So there is good progress there, but I think that has to continue to accelerate because you don't want to be churning out just basic graphic artists now, because things like that are directly under attack in low-cost locations. And I think ultimately the UK will simply have to choose if it's going to be part of the global process or lead it. We need publishers here, we need decision makers here, we need finance from here, so that this is still a center and a decision-making location, not just part of the kind of global chain.